Hi everybody, how's my diploma in business marketing class doing? I trust everybody is happy, healthy, and that you are ready to take on the next chapter in sales and ops, and that is chapter 7. That deals with your responsibilities as a salesperson, and then especially your responsibility in thorough preparation before you do your presentation. Okay, let's continue with the chapter and see how things go. Interestingly enough, it's very often that we or the modern day consumer has been labeled as somebody who is not as sociable as previous decades. And that's why I thought it appropriate to, at this point, bring in two images. One from commuters or consumers traveling back from work, to town to shop in the 1940s, as opposed to the 2019 group that supposedly is less sociable. Well, I think the picture tells a story. Everybody in the 1940s were also not paying attention to each other. Their attention was just not on a screen, interactive screen, but it was in the newspaper. So it was the print media, obviously. But still, I can't see in the picture at the top right, 1940, that anybody is talking to each other. Neither could I in the group at the bottom right in 2019. Proves our point. Your responsibilities is to conclude a sale. And you do that as a salesperson by identifying the customer's need, by doing a proper presentation, a good demo that goes with that. Ensure that you negotiate mutually beneficial terms with the prospective buyer, and then also obviously close the sale. Otherwise, everything has been of no value. I've taken that particular slide of a interesting site on the internet, and I thought it appropriate because I think what has been categorized as the anatomy of the modern sales representative, as opposed to the traditional sales representative, people, not much has changed. Maybe I think appearance, the attire, sunglasses, that may have changed. But importantly for me, the important aspects of a salesperson still remains essential. And that I'm going to highlight a few. You can read through it in your own time in greater detail. Is that you must be an emphatic listener. You must be passionate about problem solving. You must be knowledgeable about your product. And you have to, unfortunately, I think in the modern era, ensure that you are tech savvy, and then ensure that you have one foot in sales and one in marketing. Figure 7.1 is a very good illustration of the key responsibilities of a salesperson. The key responsibilities are the 6 that is highlighted there, and that is that you need to be able to manage your databases and knowledge. We'll get to that in greater detail just now. You have to self-manage. You have to be able to handle complaints, provide specific service to the customer, and then obviously implement the sales and marketing objectives. Everything, however, starts with prospecting, and we'll get to that right now. The first step and the first responsibility of for any it's the first step in the selling cycle, but it's also one of the first key responsibilities of a salesperson, and that is to prospect. Prospect ensures that you will continuously have sufficient leads to follow up, to make appointments, to maybe get an interview, to do a presentation that will result in a sale. Now, importantly for salespeople to remember is that you will have to continuously prospect. You cannot miss opportunities to source new prospects. You will have obviously different levels of or different types of prospects based on the different levels of importance, depending on if you're selling a multi-functional fax copier, scanner, printer, or a can of cool drink, like a retail, or what that qualifies as a retail sale. Before we continue and try and identify sources where we can find new prospects, is that I would like to clarify the difference between three very important concepts. Firstly, the difference between a lead, a prospect, and a prospective buyer or a buyer or a client. A lead is anybody that we find out there that has responded to any form of communication that you have done. Could be cold calling, could be that they phone in because they picked up a brochure somewhere or they saw your ad on television, and they become a prospect when you qualify them. In other words, if they have a specific need for the product that you are selling, then they become a prospect. They're not a client yet. They're just a prospect that has the potential to become a buyer because they have been qualified. Leads is everybody. Prospects is who have been qualified that might be become clients or buyers. And then obviously your buyer, your client, is a person who have gone through the whole process and who have decided to take you up on what you have offered. Prospecting is important because you cannot grow as a business if you are not continuously finding new prospects. You cannot have a database of 1,000 leads that you have qualified into about 600 prospects and then work through the whole list, because once you get to the bottom of that list, you've gone through all the 600 prospects. Where do you start? You have to continuously fill up the funnel from the top with new leads and new leads that you find in various sources or through various sources, like we see in the next screen. It could be that once you've completed the sale, even if it's not been successful, you can ask a prospect or a customer if they have anybody that they think might be interested in buying the product as well. Those kind of references are actually rather well qualified prospects, because it's somebody that you would recommend because you see that person as a friend, and you're not going to recommend a product if you're not happy with it to a friend of yours. And therefore it makes that prospect, or qualifies that prospect already. Any kind of word of mouth, any advertising, exhibitions, direct mailing, any inquiry that results in a prospect or a lead contacting your business, inquiring for more information, and maybe an opportunity for you to present your product to them. Internet nowadays, or social media platforms, a very, very helpful source of new prospects. And then obviously, I think for various reasons, I think time restrictions being one of them, maybe security issues, safety issues the other. Door-to-door is not sort of a common practice nowadays. It's very much a method that is used to canvass new prospects, but only for specific industries. Time for appropriate quote. Brian Tracy, very successful and have trained more than 2 million salespeople in over decades, made a very important observation and is quoted for saying, keep your sales pipeline full by prospecting continuously. Always have more people to see than you have time to see them. And that is a very, very important lesson. Another key responsibility of a salesperson is that you can't just focus on prospecting and finding new potential clients. You also have to manage and work the database of your existing customers, um, because you have the information on your database already. You have the contact details. You have the important people in the right positions that you need to contact. They already a client, and you need to just service them properly and service your database properly, finding out what their sort of order history has been in the past, and then um, make a call, tell them that you see that their last order has been 3 months ago, and based on their previous order history, they usually would require new products or a reorder after about 3 months. Is it a good time? Do they need another presentation on maybe the products that's available? Um, so work the existing customer that you have. Make sure that your existing customers are also continuously serviced. Another reason for phoning your existing customers is not just to get another order, but also um, maybe ask for a reference of somebody that they know might be interested in the product that you are selling, because you, as the satisfied customer, would probably make a good recommendation because you are satisfied with the product and you know and have experienced the benefits of the product. As so often said, the information that you have obtained and that is stored in your database or databases are of no significance and of no value if you do not properly analyze them and establish, for instance, buying patterns of existing customers, and do proper research and update your databases. That's probably one of the greatest challenges. I think I've shared this experience with you before, but I've received SMSs for the last 6 months from Toyota, um, reminding me that my Toyota Fortuner is due for its next service, not realizing that I have sold my Toyota Fortuner more than 3 years ago already. So at some point, somebody did not properly update the database, and that is a very important thing to continuously do, because there's nothing more annoying than customers um, who receive unwanted unwanted SMSs on WhatsApp and phone calls about information that is not correct. Um, Many businesses obviously then have taken the approach of buying databases from companies who specialize in collecting information and developing databases with information that they then sell to businesses who do not have the time or the resources to go out and do the proper prospecting. They therefore just buy databases that exist already. And that's where and why you often get these calls from out of nowhere, from a company that you are aware of but that you've never done business with in the past. Talking about databases and keeping databases up to date, it's also important to regularly keep an eye on what your competitors are doing, especially what they are doing, correctly. Usually, about 70% of what we do during our selling process is is repeating what we have done successfully ourselves in the past. 20% of the activities that we do in sales is something similar to what our competitors do, and only 10% of our sales activities are new um, activities that we have never done or tried before. Another key responsibility of a salesperson is the ability to self-manage. Salespeople will very often not keep normal business hours because the nature of their responsibilities require them to sometimes be out of office, sometimes be out of town, especially if they're visiting clients in rural areas. And I think that this is why they quite often do a lot of planning in dividing the area that they have to and have been allocated by the company or the brand that they represent into manageable territories, and then they plan their trips accordingly to ensure that they don't do unnecessary traveling or only see one or two clients maybe in a rural area. Very often, and I know when I was still on the road myself, representing my previous college and doing recruiting, we ensured that we traveled um, on the previous day to get to the destination where our first appointment the next morning would be. So you do not have to travel early in the morning. You can actually get a fresh and an early start because you're already in the town or city where you will have your first appointment. Um, One of the aspects that is requires a lot of skill from a salesperson is time management. Our time is limited. We know there's so many hours in a day, and so many days in a month, and so many months in a year, and so many days in a year. And we only have the capacity to do so much. And also put yourself in the shoes of your potential customers. Um, their time is valuable and limited too. And remember that any sales call you make is usually an interruption. It's an interruption of where they are busy working and therefore their work is interrupted, or if you're calling them during their leisure time, it's an interruption of their relaxed time. So regardless of when you call, it is an interruption, and therefore you have to ensure that when you make those calls, that you plan your day according to the needs of your customers. You, after a while, become experienced enough to know what is a good time to phone, when is a good time to phone for the customer. And I've had experiences like that before, where people have become very difficult when they eventually get hold of you because they struggle to get hold of you. And I told a sales lady one day that she has to put herself in the shoes of the clients or the customers that she's phoning. If she has a good understanding of what their day looks like normally, then she would know what is the best time to phone every particular customer. Because there's nothing more annoying than being interrupted when you are busy, regardless if you are relaxing or if you are working. It is very seldom, if ever, that when a sales call is made, that the customer or potential customer immediately says yes. You don't have to tell me any story. I want this product. That does not happen. Very often they have objections, and an objection should be treated purely as an invitation for more information. When a customer complains, and that's why on that first slide that we showed the anatomy of a salesperson, is that you have to listen and listen carefully and with attention. Because if you have been able um, to master that particular skill, you are going to be very successful because um, you will have unlocked that ability to identify or read between the lines and identify what the customer is really saying with the objection or with the complaint. And very often it is just it, it might be an annoyance because nobody wants to hear all the time that your company is so bad and this product is this and your service is this. But actually what they are saying is that we are actually happy with your product, but not the way in which your service is offered. And as a result of that, we're unhappy. Because if it's a product issue, it's simple to replace the product. That's not a challenge. Usually your complaints are service related, and I think very often because people are very vocal and often aggressive when they complain, it's not something that many of us take kindly or are comfortable with. But actually, if we treat that person's complaint with seriousness and with respect, and you genuinely want to assist them and help them, then your battle is half won. I have always said that I'm much rather have a vocal, expressive, complaining customer, because such a customer is telling me exactly what's wrong and what I'm doing wrong and what's wrong with my product. I'm afraid to have a customer that I don't know who's unhappy because they do not complain, they are not vocal, they just don't do business with you anymore. I would much rather deal with the complaint and handle it professionally, because it is so much harder and so much more expensive to find a new customer than just to service your existing ones better. Another key responsibility is to remember that you're offering a service, you're offering a solution to a customer's problems with providing them with a product or a service that's going to solve that problem and satisfy their need. To follow on what we've said previously in how handling complaints and why listening is important, is exactly not just for handling complaints, but also to identify more accurately what the specific need of a customer is. Because if you know that, you know exactly what product to offer that customer, and if it's not something that you are selling, you're not wasting your own time, and you're not wasting the potential customer's time, because you are just trying to make a sale, but you know that the person actually doesn't need it and he can't really actually afford it. As a salesperson, always remember that if you solve a potential customer's problem, you become their hero, because you have offered them the solution to something that they've been battling with. We all know that the objective of most salespeople, if not all of us, is to keep a customer happy, because if we keep a customer happy, apart from saving the time of finding a new one and the money to find a new one, we retain that particular customer, and eventually, if we continue to satisfy their needs and offer them good service, they will become loyal customers, and loyal customers eventually are the best form of advertising that any business can find, because they will be telling the whole world that they've had a good experience. But unlike people who've had a bad experience, who will also tell the whole world, the people who have had good experiences will tell the whole world, but specifically their friends, because they want them to share the same positive experience than they have had experienced. It's very important not to focus just on 20%, and we all know the 20-80 rule. We do not want to focus just on the 20% of our customers that's responsible for 80% of our turnover, in other words, our key accounts. So managing our key accounts is very important, but we also have to manage the other 80% and try and, because we will lose eventually at some point for various reasons, mainly economic reasons. You will lose some of your 20%ers, but to keep that 20-80 ratio going the whole time, you need to have customers within that 80% group that you can convert to become a 20%er. Those are your loyal customers. Another great benefit of establishing a very good relationship with your customers is that you will have continuous future business as well, because if you sold a product to a particular customer and they are happy, and they go through a different cycle of their life, they will still remain with you and then maybe not have a need for that product anymore, but maybe for another product that you offer, and that is appropriate for the life, a stage in their life cycle they're in at that point. Furthermore, their children will then also support your brand because you have been happy with that brand. I know for a fact that my wife has bought every single Golf since the first Golf came out, because her parents were VW supporters and were very happy. So she grew up with that good experience, and I'm pretty sure that when my children or our children one day are going to be ready for their first vehicles, that we will look very kindly towards the VW brand. Having said all of these things and highlighting all the key responsibilities of a salesperson up to this point, we still have to remember that we have set ourselves specific goals, and that our goals are goals that obviously the company has given and provided us to reach their objectives. Again, here at this point, make sure that you clarify between what an objective, what a strategy, and what tactics are. We have addressed that in some of your other modules, but it is important that you remember that you are representing a particular brand or company, and that your personal goals come second, and the goals and objectives of the company come first. To be able to do that, you need to, as a salesperson, be very clear on what the policies and procedure is of your company, specifically regarding providing credit and discounts and stuff like that, because at some point during the sales negotiation, which we'll deal with later on, that will become part of your part of the conversation, and would be some of the questions or proposals that a potential customer would offer to you, and you need to be able to understand what your parameters are, and how far you can go with providing them credit or providing them discounts. I thought of providing you with another inspirational quote here, but I think we don't need an inspirational quote at the moment. We need a cup of coffee. So let's take a break, go fill up your cup of coffee, and we'll see each other very soon.